Cardinals pick is in, but is not popped up yet.
I haven't seen it actually leak yet. Yeah. Still keeping an eye out for it. Let's hear it in the chat. Just based on the board so far, knowing that the Bengals are officially on the clock now, let us know in the chat who your pick is. Obviously, we need to see who the Cardinals pick is before you can really tell us. But if you are sitting in the Bengals draft room right now and you're watching this stream, what are you picking?
That's the question.
Got a quick super chat. Member of 4 months.
Member chat.
Fetus. Hey Jacob, asking for a friend. Are there any locks of that glorious hair floating around that one could buy?
I guess I should have donated, probably, right? Probably had enough that I cut off, but no, it was all disposed of properly, and now it's gone, and I got a real haircut.
There it is.
Oh!
Jacob is bummed. The Arizona Cardinals select Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. And Jacob's dream is off the board.
We were so close.
He's turning red. He's turning red.
Oh, we were so close. That sucks. All right, on the clock.
Chat. Now that Walter Nolan is off the board and the Bengals are on the clock. Where are you going?
Look, the guy
seeing the guy comments on social F. Now it's going to be Stewart.
Yeah.
My understanding is the Bengals' preferred defensive tackles are now off the board. Stolen from the Bengals. Dear Bengals, Will Johnson is yours. Press the button now.
I would be fine with that.
Can we see a fourth Michigan Wolverine go?
I like Will J.
17 picks.
I like Will J. That's frustrating. He was a perfect fit for the Bengals. I'm hoping they trade back here, get some more assets. Now, the guy that I originally tabbed for the Bengals back in mid-January as the ideal pick was James Pierce Jr. He's still on this board. He's a very productive edge rusher from Tennessee. Him or Mike Green would be a great pick here for the Bengals if they don't move back. The nightmare is Shamar Stewart. All right,
let's see. Comments in the chat so far. Will Johnson. Lane Jordan says, I'm picking a receiver. I'm fairly confident that's not an option. Mike Green, Will Johnson, trade back. I'd trade back for sure. Jihad, best player available. Harmon, Green, trade back. Mike Green, Jihad Campbell, Jade Barron. $2 super chat from the amazing fetus. Hey Alexa, cancel my order for a full-sized mannequin. Trade back, please.
I would love to trade back. Whitcorp says if they take the 7th edge, that would suck. Neither of these players on the board that we're talking about here between Mike Green or James Pierce are anything along those lines. They're certainly premier players with great college production that I would be very, very happy getting. Don't get my reaction to Walter Nolan going off the board at 16 confused that I'm, very upset with this board. There's 2 great edge rushers. There's, 2 first-round safeties in Nicky Manwari, Malachi Starks, Will Johnson, who was the consensus corner 1 going into this season before Travis Hunter really erupted as the Heisman this year. Pick is in. So no trade back. The pick is in. No trade back. The pick is in.
We'll have to wait to see who it is. The Bengals pick is in. The ESPN broadcast now at commercial break, of course. So
Denver
we'll wait
Nuggets
on that.
put their pick in, and they went to commercial. They got Nikola Jokic. So hopefully we get the Nikola Jokic of pass rushers here.
Yep. I just got a text from one of my buddies. Time for the Bengals to pick another Michigan DB. They love him. Will Johnson, come on down.
Yeah, just building the Michigan DB room.
We'll see.
Dax Hill.
Yeah.
DJ Turner.
Listen,
Will
it's
Johnson.
certainly in play. It's certainly in play. We know that that's technically an option. I think concern from you is Shamar Stewart, certainly on the board as an option. All right, Jacob, the board is in play. We know that they're making a pick. Give me your name. Who are you picking?
I'm picking James Pierce. I'm picking James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee. I would absolutely love to take him here. It's a guy that I thought belonged in this conversation, a guy that I think is a really, really good player, and I would take him without a second thought here. I think he is a really, really good player. He ran a 4.50 40 at the combine, a dominant prospect, a 4.47 official time at the combine, a 10.3 broad jump, just a freak athlete, and was doing all of that in a short sleeve hoodie because he had some problems with his draft attire. So even more reason to believe in him. Right. I absolutely love James Pierce Jr. I think he's a special player who put together something you don't see very often, which is 3 years of sustained production as an edge rusher in the SEC. So I'm would be very happy with that pick.
The pick is in. With the 17th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals have selected Shamar Stewart, edge, Texas A&M.
All right, there it is, folks. Shamar Stewart is your first-round pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, maybe not what everyone wanted coming into the night, but you get a guy in Shamar Stewart that put together something that we haven't seen very often. And that's a perfect RAS score. And obviously you can only see one of those at a given time. And Shamar Stewart was phenomenal at the combine. Absolutely ridiculous in terms of what he was able to do testing in Indianapolis when he had the chance to go out there and show out for NFL scouts. He was unbelievable. You see some of these numbers here as I'm getting it pulled up. Shamar Stewart, 6'5", 267 with a 4.59 40, a 1.58 10-yard split. I mean, those bright green numbers all over the board is I mean, that's as good as you can ask for athletic testing. He's a special player in terms of the prospect he is and what he provides off the edge, or what he could provide off the edge. This is something where you're predictive, right? You're hoping that Shamar Stewart can match those numbers more closely than he did at Texas A&M. He struggled at Texas A&M to convert that athleticism into production, right? You missed a lot of the numbers that you normally see from a guy like this. He went through his college career having 4.5 sacks, which certainly isn't a high number, not a number that you're hoping to see out of a guy you drafted 17, but then he matches Myles Garrett's athletic testing at the combine. And I know Myles Garrett had 30-plus sacks in college at Texas A&M, so it might not be fair to compare these two players, but if you're built like Myles Garrett, run like Myles Garrett, and lift like Myles Garrett, maybe at some point down the line you could play like Myles Garrett's little brother. And if the Bengals got Myles Garrett's little brother at 17, then that's a pretty dang good pick who's going to be very, very productive for a long, long time. So you're putting a lot of faith in the new coaching staff in the trenches. You're putting a lot of faith in Al Golden as the new defensive coordinator to make this work, to have him turn into the player you think he can be. But this is very similar to the take I have on Jalen Milroe in this quarterback class. There might not be a player in this entire class with a ceiling higher than Shamar Stewart if he can have all this click with that athleticism. Here, I'll throw it up there again just because it truly is unbelievable. A perfect 10.00 RAS score. I mean, a 4.59 40 at nearly 270 pounds is unbelievable. That's not something you ever see before. So, yeah, I mean, is it my favorite pick? Maybe not, but this is someone that you can talk yourself into very, very easily into being a very crucial piece to this Bengals defense for many, many years to come.
Yeah, the biggest knock against Shamar Stewart is he just didn't produce in college the way that you would expect a first-round pick to produce. And he's certainly got all the physical traits that you would hope for from an edge prospect. The problem is that ultimately it didn't come together on the field for whatever reason, right? So you mentioned the insane measurements and the insane RAS score, but our friends at Gridiron Grading, who we're going to do our best to get on the show here when we get a moment, they had a production score, Shamar Stewart, of 50.2. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and act like I watch all the tape. I just sent you a couple DMs, Jacob, with some film if you want to try and pull it in.
That's what I was doing right now.
Ultimately, Shamar Stewart is a guy who showed flashes of extreme athletic ability. And many of you will probably remember the clips from the Senior Bowl where Shamar Stewart was knocking guys on their butt. And that's the type of ceiling that he has. You mentioned Myles Garrett. His measurables were very similar. And if we can get half of Myles Garrett's production, I mean, I'm pretty sure that most of Cincinnati fans would be very happy with that. But at the end of the day, this is a very Bengals pick in my eyes. Mm-hmm. They oftentimes go with these guys who are extremely impressive from a measurement perspective and from an athleticism perspective, but maybe didn't put it together on the field. My problem is with the guys on the board and the opportunity that you had to have an addition here with proven guys who have ability to not only be athletic, but transfer that into production on the field, to go and pick Shamar Stewart and basically take a risk on a guy who wasn't able to put it together on the field. That's a struggle for me. Now, the draft pick was made very quickly. There was no real hesitation. It showed that the pick was in with like 5 minutes still on the clock. So whether that meant nobody was interested in moving up or the Bengals were just that excited about Shamar Stewart, I don't know. But the truth of the matter is that from my perspective, your first round pick needs to be a guy who you can plug in and immediately expect production from. And if you're going to draft a guy who didn't produce in college, why are you expecting him to be able to come in and immediately produce at the pro level too? That's the struggle that I have. Hopefully he'll be good. Hopefully Al Golden can work his magic and help him progress into a great pro. But I have my concerns for sure about Shamar Stewart. But ultimately the Bengals have made their pick, and that's what they're going to go with. Did you have a chance to get those videos in so we can?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously everyone points to the sack numbers, 4.5, very, very low, but this is a guy in Shamar Stewart that's disruptive in other ways. He's a freak athlete, as we've mentioned, but that get off the ball to disrupt the reverse on that play here. You see him lined up on the left, just right over and crunching Jeremiah Love in the middle of that defense. This is a player who's a very, very good run defender, probably a better run defender than we have in James Pierce or Mike Green, which is something that the Bengals said this week they do value. There you see Lenoris Sellers, who's a quarterback that's projected to go in the top 10 next year, who Shamar Stewart just chases down the sideline. This is a player who's all over the field, sideline to sideline, really adds true speed to this Bengals team on the defense, has the ability to be a superstar, which is something the Bengals definitely need. You're drafting ceiling here, hoping that we've only just seen the start of Shamar Stewart. You see, even though he's not getting sacks in these highlights, he's disrupting the game, and he's causing, different things in here. Texas A&M's a team that was one game away from making the playoff. If they won that last week game against Texas, they would have been going to the playoff instead of the Longhorns, or at least been going to the SEC championship. And we know both teams that played in that made the playoff. So this is a defense that drove that team. They played two different quarterbacks this year. It's all because of this defensive front. So Shamar Stewart, obviously, the face of that, and now he's going to try to be the face of this new Bengals defense as they try to rebuild, after a rough back-to-back years of missing the playoffs. But Shamar Stewart's a player that, though he might leave some things to be desired, he does a lot of stuff that no one else can do. And I think that's something the Bengals probably hung their hat on in this process is we're getting a player that, is there another James Pierce in this class? Maybe. Is there another Mike Green in this class? Maybe. I can tell you for sure there's not another Shamar Stewart because we've never seen him in any class. So, I mean, if you're going to, go optimistic here, this is one of the better picks you can possibly make. Pessimistic Bengals fans certainly understand why we're more upset, but this is one that I think, if it does work out, we're going to be looking back on in the next few years thinking, wow, what a no-brainer. Why were we ever, upset about that move at 17? How was he even on the board? And here you see him at the Senior Bowl, where it is really where he started his fly in this process, flying up the boards, getting up to where we're talking about now at 17. He was a dominant pass rusher at the Senior Bowl, just running through the faces of these offensive linemen. Truly put together a great weekend that put him in a position to have one of the better combines we've ever seen for an edge rusher and fly up the board to a point where we were talking about him in the top 10. Now the Bengals get him at 17. If he works out, I can't emphasize it enough. It could be one of the more exciting picks the Bengals have made since Joe Burrow, but there's certainly a lot of risk involved here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy that, again, athletically and from a strictly profile perspective, a guy that probably had the top 10 kind of draft pick profile in terms of strictly athletic ability, but 4.5 sacks over his 3-year college career, certainly didn't put the numbers up the way that he would. But as you said, when you watch the film, he certainly jumps off as an athletic freak and he disrupts in other ways. Mock drafts had him going as high as number 9 overall. So certainly there were people who believed that he was up there with one of the most talented opportunities. And I'm getting text messages from friends who say, oh, what a great pick. He's a beast. You're going to love him. Maybe, certainly maybe.
I hope.
I hope. You know, I'm reading through the chat, and there's a lot of people who are sharing our concern, Jacob, as Gray Zabel goes off the clock or off the board at number 18 to the Seattle Seahawks, the offensive tackle from North Dakota State. But look, there's rightfully so concerns, and there's rightfully so people that are excited. You know, only got 4.5 sacks. Jesus. Myles Garrett comes. I'm term that I'm not going to repeat on here, even though I think we all saw it or know. Look, the truth of the matter is that every draft pick is super polarizing, and this is going to be one of the more polarizing picks that the Bengals could make. So you go out and you get a guy who's 6'6", 290 pounds, an athletic freak, a 10.0 on the RAS score for sure. But from a production standpoint, just not up to the level that you would expect. At the end of the day, look, Al Golden, we have a new defensive coordinator in the building now, an opportunity for him to put his stamp on this defense. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of this broadcast, ultimately they need a guy who can come in and immediately make an impact. This team cannot afford to start slowly again like they have the last couple of years and go 1-3 or 2-2 in the first 4 games of the season. They need a hot start. Zach Taylor has talked about the changes that they're going to make to their offseason program in order to be able to do that. We talked about Jihad Campbell, a guy who was available on the board but is going to miss the first several games. Shamar Stewart, a guy that athletically is going to come in and be able to compete with the best of them. But from a production standpoint, you're going to have to see what you can get. The nice part here about it, Jacob, at least as it sits right now, is that he's going to be lining up opposite Trey Hendrickson, who's going to get a ton of attention from opposing offensive lines.
Right.
And so he's going to have opportunities for one-on-one matchups to be able to come in and have an opportunity to disrupt plays. And that's what he's going to be asked to do from day one. I'm going to stay optimistic about the pick and certainly have faith in it. And I think ultimately, look, am I going to sit here and expect Shamar Stewart to turn in to Myles Garrett as many are comparing him to? No. But am I expecting him to come in and turn into a complete bust? I think it's really hard to be a complete bust with that kind of athletic ability. At the NFL level, and this is, again, goes back to what we talked about on Monday with some of the quotes from Duke Tobin, measuring productivity against athletic ability. And, you know, Duke Tobin talked about there's a difference there. And we talked about it on Monday specifically. The quote was, quote, "You've got to have the physical traits to play in this league. There are plenty of examples of guys who have not had great collegiate production, but who have stupendous NFL athletic traits who have come into our league and really shined." That's a quote directly from Duke Tobin, who maybe was foreshadowing a little bit to say, hey, Shamar Stewart might be our guy.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, they certainly stuck to it. We brought it up and said that was a concern after his press conference, that they, you know, prioritized traits so much, and we see that certainly was the case there, because any kind of prioritization on production, you're not taking Shamar Stewart there, and obviously they did. So, look, I am going to stay optimistic. He was on that list of guys that I really didn't want the Bengals to take at 17, but of the guys on that list, he is certainly the easiest one to talk yourself into having a great NFL career. So I'm gonna reserve, you know, my judgment here until he puts on the stripes. I think he can be a very, very exciting player. As I said right when we took him, the ceiling is higher than almost anyone else there, because there are no examples of him, because we've never seen an athlete like this side of Myles Garrett. It's a perfect 10.0 for a reason. That means he's the best. He's number one. Myles Garrett shortly below there. So hopefully the athleticism can, you know, parlay into production at some point in the near future. But as you said there, if you're avoiding a guy like Jihad Campbell because you don't think he's going to be ready for week 1, Shamar Stewart's certainly not going to be an elite rusher in week 1. You're basing this pick on production or on development and getting him to a level that he's not at now. Even the biggest Shamar Stewart fans can't look me in the eye and say that he's ready to go in the NFL. He had 4.5 sacks at Texas A&M. Now, if you believe in him for other reasons, that's completely fine and justifiable. But if the Bengals are making that pick to win now, Shamar Stewart is not the pick. So it doesn't seem like that was going through their mind at all. So I guess that probably answers the question about the temperature of Zach Taylor's seat, because this is one that is probably giving Al Golden who he wants in terms of someone that he picks the traits and thinks he can work it out for him. So that's going to be great. Here we see pick 19 roll in. It's Emeka Egbuka to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because you have players on the board that put up great production and checked a lot more boxes, and you go with Shamar Stewart. Now, I see a lot of people in the chat saying you should have went Malachi Starks, you should have went Will Johnson. I would probably take Shamar Stewart over, one of those DBs. Will Johnson's falling for a reason. He was banged up in 2024. He sat out in the last few games. He missed a lot of time. He kind of got targeted last year in terms of, people kind of attacking him in man coverage. It wasn't the same player we saw in 2023. So I'm not nearly as high on Will Johnson as a lot of other people. So I wouldn't be as gung-ho on that. Safety, they're telling you that they believe in Geno Stone and Jordan Battle. So they weren't going to take safety there at 17. I do think that'll be in play later in the draft. Look, it's frustrating. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's frustrating, but it's okay. He can be really, really good.